Talk about why therapy stops working. If you've never been to therapy, then you might not realize this, but a lot of people, after a certain period of time, they sort of reach this plateau where they're no longer talking about their deep emotional issues and they're just really venting and they're just really staying above the surface. That has been my experience many times too. It's important to define the goal of therapy, at least for me, and that is to make tangible changes in my life. If I'm going to therapy and it's been 6 months or a year and my life is virtually the same that it was when I started, that means that I either don't have the right therapist, I'm not doing the work, or a combination of both. And so the mistake that a lot of people make, the reason I bring that up, is because oftentimes I start going to therapy with a very clear intention of what I want to work on. And as soon as I work on that, I don't stop, reassess, and define new goals. I'm just kind of like, oh, awesome. Now what? And then I just keep showing up. And that's when I'm like, because I don't take a step back and think about what comes next, I just feel this panic of like, well, what do I talk about now, right? I worked on the thing, so now I guess I'll just tell them about how I'm feeling, right? Which gets to my second point, why therapy stops working. I leave the work of what to talk about to my therapist. In other words, I'm not intentional going into my sessions. I've seen 4 different therapists in my life, and each time I started, I had a very clear reason of what I wanted to work on. By the time that I worked through that, or most of it, I didn't stop and then ask myself, what's next? So I would just show up, and I would almost like have this mild panic before therapy, like 5 or 10 minutes before, where I'd be like, hey man, I told myself I was gonna stop and just maybe do a breathing exercise or maybe journal before therapy, but I'm almost on autopilot, and I'm watching a fucking YouTube video or something, and so I'm just so distracted by the time I get to therapy. And nowadays, a lot of it's virtual, and so it's way easier to just be distracted, right? Before I had to go somewhere, show up in person, and so at least, you're driving and it's like I'm focused on one task. No, now I could be laughing my ass off at a YouTube video, and 1 minute later, be sitting down trying to have a serious conversation with my therapist. So if I don't stop and actually set an intention for what I want to talk about, a lot of times I'll just end up talking about surface level shit that doesn't really matter. And again, maybe every now and then a session needs to be that. But if that becomes the norm in my sessions, then I know I'm doing something wrong. The third reason is some kind of emotional block. So again, a lot of people think, I know for a fact what I thought therapy was for a long time was to talk about my feelings. Wrong. Turns out therapy is actually supposed to help me feel my emotions. One of the things that I've realized is that therapy can be a great tool for sort of laying out my plan, right? My understanding of myself and all of my problems. But once I have that understanding, I have to actually start working through them. And unfortunately, the only way to work through my traumas is to feel my emotions. So that can be a confusing time, right? It's like, all right, I have this map, but I'm still stuck here talking about it. That means I need to go start actually walking the territory that I've mapped out. And if therapy can help me do that, awesome. Keep doing it. If it's just stagnant and it's keeping me there because I have this illusion that at least by going to therapy, I'm doing the work, right? When I already have a fucking map of what I need to work on, and I'm just going back to talk about my weekly problems, then maybe it's time to reconsider. And that doesn't necessarily have to mean quitting therapy, but it just means, well, what can I add that will help me feel my emotions? The fourth reason why therapy stops working, hitting the surface level talking points. After a while, if we don't ever go deep, then we're really just treating symptoms and we're not getting to the core of the issues. And so, right, if we're talking about our relationship day in and day out, and just that is all that our therapy is, maybe it would benefit me to explore my relationship with my mom or explore my past romantic relationships. But the reason that it's easy to fall into this just talk about the things that are happening in present life is because it feels safe and it feels urgent. And oftentimes what I'll find is that I will be going through some emotional problem or some difficulty in a relationship, and then I will use therapy as a way to sort of get a little jolt of adrenaline. And so if I'm never going deep, then I'm just going to keep repeating the same stuff over and over. And finally, reason number 5 is sort of, I just touched on it, but it's the inverse of reason number 4, which is avoiding certain topics because we don't think that they have anything to do, and we don't believe that they're tied to our present day problems, right? We don't understand, or we don't even want to accept or believe that one time that we were bullied in middle school has anything to do with why we have low self-esteem in present day, right? And it's like, I had a friend once that he decided to start going to therapy, and he said, well, I called my therapist and I told him, here's what we're going to talk about and here's what we're not going to talk about, and that's that. All right, well, in that case, you might as well not even go. Because a lot of times, the thing that we don't want to talk about is actually the thing that we should talk about. So those are the 5 reasons, and I thought of a 6th reason as I was recording this video, and I briefly touched on this, but I think a 6th reason why therapy stops working is that we never pair it with anything else. When I first started going to talk therapy, I thought that in and of itself was the end goal. Get to therapy, and that's where I'll sort out all my problems. More and more today, I've realized that that's actually where I start, right? There's so many people that want to try psychedelics and do all this healing in that space. And it's like, man, if you haven't done any talk therapy, I don't recommend that anybody even touches those medicines. And so again, and it doesn't have to be psychedelics that you pair it with. It can be internal family systems. It can be reading more about these subjects, having difficult conversations with the people in your life. Like, at the end of the day, if, again, we get back to the goal of therapy is to make tangible change in our life. That can sound intimidating, but I have found sometimes that the most simple decisions are actually the ones that create the biggest change. Like having a conversation with my dad. For a lot of people, it can be, oh, you're in a terrible job or a terrible relationship. And it's like, well, I don't even want to begin to think about my life without those two. And it's like, okay, but for a lot of us, it's also just like, hey, when's the last time that you told your dad that you love him? Or when's the last time that you told your partner that they are an amazing partner and that you showed it too, that you're grateful? And so I'll leave you with that. And if there's any questions you have about this or anything that you're struggling with that you want to learn more about, leave a comment below. I might have gone through something similar, and who knows, maybe that can be my next video. But anyway, thank you for letting me share a part of my story with you. I hope that it helped you or that it touched you in some way, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your week.